class had ever borrowed before. We invented the credit card basically to put credit into the hands of everybody who hadn't had it before. And it was a way for the Americans people to postpone coming to terms with the end of rising wages. Instead of rising wages, you could borrow more and more, which the American people did, until they couldn't anymore. You know, if you borrow more and more on a flat wage, it's only a matter of time before there's not enough money coming in to pay the debts, to pay the credit, the interest, and the amortization of the debt. And so in 2007, this house of credit cards fell apart, and we're still living in the crisis because, in a sense, we're coming to terms as a people with how this economy worked. The only other thing I would say, and urge the viewers to grasp, is if over the last 35 years what the worker gets from his or her employer is flat, it is also true that over the last 30 years, the productivity of the worker, how much stuff you produce in an hour for your employer to sell, kept going up. And if you have what you give to the employer, your productivity, go up each year, but what the employer gives to you is flat, then the difference between those two is profit. That's what a business is in. And that's why the gap between rich and poor has become so extreme in America. The workers went into heavier and heavier debt, and the employers cashed in like never before in American history.
One of the things that you've talked about that's really fascinating, and you were just talking about this afternoon, is that essentially to solve the crisis of capitalism of the 1920s and 30s was that Roosevelt made a deal. And we talk about this as the wage productivity deal, that as workers produce more, they get a bigger share of the pie. And part of bringing about that social peace in this time when there was great political instability and uprisings and movements of homeless, farmers, women, movements of communists and the CIO and so forth, was that this wage productivity deal was made. And this wage productivity deal, in a way, was kept until the 1970s. And what really, the question I want to get at, and this is something that a number of people have pointed out, is a breakdown in that wage productivity deal, that in exchange for social peace, workers were willing to work harder, produce more in exchange for higher wages. What ended that? Remember, this period is beginning with the end of the 1960s. There are these great political uprisings and movements you talked about. Why then? Why in the 1970s was this deal broken? And also, where I'm going with this is, what's going to replace it effectively?
Well, I think you had already since the Great Depression, since this explosion of social welfare legislation, Social Security, unemployment insurance, public sector jobs created in the 1930s, 40s, even into the 50s, you had the problem that this was paid for in part by taxing corporations and taxing the rich. The tax rates on corporations and the rich were much, much higher in the 40s, 50s, and 60s than they are today. Corporations didn't want to pay those taxes. They had been persuaded to keep social peace, as you put it, in the 1930s when people were very angry and there was a big union movement and socialist and communist movements. So they had been persuaded, they didn't want to do it, but that they better do it. But they felt after the war was over that that situation now wasn't so dire, that they didn't have to make that deal, and so they began to undo it. I think they were still held back as late as the 60s and 70s, partly by the threat of the Soviet Union, an other that was out there that kind of worried them, and it was looking like it was growing. After all, China had been added to the Soviet sphere of influence, then Cuba and things like that. But also they felt that there was still the memory of the Great Depression, and the mass of workers was worried. They didn't want to go back to that, and they would see any effort by business to go in that direction as risky to them. By the 1970s, and particularly by the later 70s and into the 80s, you had a self-confidence in the business community. They had waited long enough. They could now roll back something they had never wanted and only accepted because of this special. That seemed gone. The unions were weaker. They had been becoming weaker since the mid-50s. The anti-communist McCarthy period of the 50s had basically wiped out the socialists, and they weren't. So the forces that had pushed it on them in the Great Depression were now much, much weaker or non-existent, So now was their chance. And they would elect a Reagan as the symbol of the return of the business community, and they've been in charge really ever since. And they felt that this was what they needed to improve their profitability and what they could now have the strength to impose on the American economy. And, you know, it worked real well for 20, 30 years. They just kept pushing, and has happened so often before, they pushed too far. And now they're beginning to get the pushback.
I see a lot of parallels. A lot of people talk about the parallels with the Great Depression. I actually think the parallels go further back to the teens and the 20s, when we also had a massive movement of Wobblies and Eugene Debs' Socialist Party that was winning over 1 million votes. We had the emergence of industrial unionism that was challenging the conservative American Federation of Labor. And when the U.S. went into World War I, there was a crackdown